I should clean that. I should clean that up.
Here we are. We're live. Okay, welcome everybody. I need to get our chat up on the side so that I can see all. I'm Stacy Whitman, and I'm the owner of the Curious Cat Bookshop. And welcome to our live chat with Wesley Chu.
Hey, thanks for having me.
And just wanted to let you guys know about what's happening in the bookstore before we get started with our conversation. We are having our first D&D one-shot game happening in the store next week. So keep an eye on, not keep an eye, but go to our website. It's curiouscatbookshop.com/events for all the details. You don't have to bring anything. We'll even have dice. So if you've never played D&D before, this is the perfect opportunity to learn a little bit about it. We have multiple book clubs, and that includes Silent Book Club the last Wednesday of every month. And we're starting to do online writing workshops with me. I'm a former publisher and now editor at large at Two Books, which is the imprint of Lee and Low Books that publishes diverse science fiction, well, all genres for middle grade and YA. I am losing my train of thought. So that is Curious Cat Bookshop.
Or your first D&D session. Whoever out there, do not pick the Illusionist unless you really love the roleplay.
That's good to know.
I'm done. That was my one.
I always goes for the ranged weapons, but curiouscatbookshop.com/events and look for our September 6th writing workshop. And while many of you are not local to us, we do ask that if you love this conversation tonight and want to buy the book, please order it from us. All the books, in fact. And if you go to the link down below on YouTube, you can order it at curiouscatbookshop.com. Order all of Wes's books.
All of that.
Forgot one thing. Oh, well, anyway, all of our events are on the website. So if I'm forgetting something, you can go there. Anyway.
Don't be a bard either.
Oh, that just makes me think of the movie. And they actually did a good job with him.
The movie was awesome. The movie was amazing.
Yeah.
Like one of the best fantasy movies I've seen in like 10 years.
So welcome, Wesley Chu. I'm going to read your bio and then we're going to talk. So Wesley Chu is the #1 New York Times bestselling author of 13 novels, including The Art of Prophecy, Time Salvager. Is it 14 now? 16?
16, I think.
Okay. Your bio is out of date.
I'm drowning myself.
You won was it the Astounding Award when you won it, or was it still the Campbell back then?
It was still the Campbell.
And that is Best New Writer as part of, it is not a Hugo, but it's part of the Hugo Award ceremony. Can
we just be real for a second? Can we just
go ahead.
Hugo?
It's part of the same ceremony.
That was my shot. That was my shot to win the Hugo. So look, can we just call it a Hugo and not just like,
I don't see the difference, to be quite honest. It's given by the same body, and I think this is really fun that you won the Young Adult Library Services Association's Alex Award, which is the award for books published for adults that have some really great crossover potential for teens. So that's always something that, I'm on the lookout for when I'm recommending stuff in the bookstore to people who might be looking for their reluctant boy who is a teenager. And this is stuff that I want to ask you about too, because you also are a member of the Screen Actors Guild and you've acted and worked as a model in stuntman. I want to know about the stuntman stuff. And you live in Los Angeles with your 2 boys. So, but most importantly, because this is so fascinating that we were at the University of Illinois at the same time. I was in the Marching Illini. And clearly I think you were on the engineering campus.
I was a CS major.
Yeah. I was over on the ag campus. I was animal science pre-vet at the time. How'd I end up a children's book editor?
I was at Taft Van Hartley. That was where I dormed that freshman year. Is that kind of near where you guys were at?
I was at Presby House, which is right on John Street. It's one of the ag houses. It doesn't exist anymore. Actually, they mowed it down and created a regular dorm.
Have you been back?
Owned by the Presbyterian Church. I got so lost when I tried to go back in 2010 on my drive out to New York. was moving to New York to start at Lee and Low, and I was driving a giant like moving truck, and I turned off on what is Neal Street.
Green? Okay.
Neal Street to get to campus. I couldn't find campus. I got lost. It looks completely different.
Super nice now. I heard it's like super nice and like super expensive now. Tuition my freshman year in 1994 was $2K.
Yeah, in-state tuition.
In-state.
Yeah. So, are you from Illinois then?
I grew up in born in Taiwan. I immigrated to Nebraska when I was 5 years old. Family moved to Naperville, which is a suburb of Chicago, when I was in 7th grade. I was U of I, graduated, worked downtown in downtown Chicago for a good 17 years.
Oh,
One day got really tired of the Chicago winters and kind of like
I don't blame you.
I had a family out in LA. Just kind of bought a place sight unseen, and I made the move. I just it was like 2016, the winter of 2016. It was the year of like Snowmageddon. I don't know if anybody's remember. It was like -20.
I was gone by then.
Oh, it was awful. Yeah. So
I moved. Well, I was there in Chicago from 01 to 03 after I graduated from college. I worked in the Wrigley building. So literally like right on the river. And yeah, but I'm from Western Illinois. I grew up on a farm. So over by the Quad Cities.
Lincoln, Nebraska. I mean,
farmland.
Us true Midwesterners are a different breed.
So yeah, I completely understand wanting to be done with the winter though. I moved to Seattle when I worked at Wizards of the Coast, and I am soft. I'm soft now. I cannot handle the winter anymore.
I mean, that's the thing is like you think you're hardy because you're from like a place that has extreme climates, but after 6 months, especially in like nice weather, like a SoCal, nice weather. After 6 months, I'd be like, oh my gosh, it's 60 degrees. I better go get my parka,
My one marching Illini story is that we played the Hawaii in 92 for the Holiday Bowl, not Holiday Bowl, whatever bowl it was. It was out in California. So we are, we're like taking off all of our coats in the 40, 50 degree weather going, it's California. We're going to wear our shorts. And the Hawaii band is like, it's so cold. It's all relative. But so tell us about how you got into stuntman work. You're really into martial arts, right?
I mean, that's a long time ago. Like this is, I immigrated to Nebraska when I was 5, and back then, back in the 80s, okay, I'm dating myself, but back in the 80s, when you grow up in like the Midwest, where there's, in this whole state of Nebraska, there's like 5 Asians in the entire state, and like 3 were in my family, 4 were in my family. So there weren't many like my people. So, I didn't really have a really strong connection to my childhood, my culture. Mm-hmm. So how I discovered, learned about my history was there's these movies that play every Sunday called Samurai Sunday, and it's like really badly dubbed kung fu movies, and that's kind of like that was my introduction into like, oh, that's what my people were like.
I love that they called kung fu movies Samurai Sunday.
We fly, we punch through walls. What the hell what is going on here? Why can't I do that? So it kind of started out my love for martial arts.
Right.
As soon as I was old enough, started training in martial arts. It kind of was what got me into writing. So I was reading a lot of fantasy at the time, but I really didn't see anything that was like Asian inspired, nothing martial art based. And I think the only book I read that was remotely Asia, based set in Asia or secondary world Asia, was Raymond E. Feist's Daughter of the Empire.
I don't think I've read that.
I mean, it's part of his. Remember Magician's Apprentice? That was his big series.
I mean, I know of it, but I haven't read it.
Yeah, it's a great series, but he had a side series that's set in this other world, and
Oh.
it was like as Asian inspired, and I loved it. But it's also written by a white guy.
Yeah. And there's so much of that. Like if you go back far enough, that
I mean, I appreciate that.
A
I
lot of
appreciate that there are some guys who went back and tried something a little bit different. But
right.
so once I I was old enough, I was working downtown Chicago, and one day this director came in. He's looking for basically stunt doubles and extras for an expensive indie, and he was just looking for bodies. And when he saw me train, and I guess he liked the way I moved and looked, he offered me a role. Just, hey, you want a speaking role? And the first thing out of my mouth was like, I don't know how to act. And then he said, this is film. We can cut anytime. We have as many things as you want. And that's true. And so I shot my first indie without having like any experience, and like the hardest scenes to do correctly are the ones where you have very few words. Like there's one scene where I had to say one word, and it took me 15 takes because that made that scene so much harder because you got to get that one word right.
So that's
kind of how I caught the bug of becoming an actor and doing stuff where it kind of came in hand. And I mean, in Chicago, it's a great commercial town.
I was gonna say that it used to be. I don't know if it still does, but it used to be such a TV filming town.
20 years ago, it was a great commercial town. These days, I don't know anymore. But and that's how I got started, and I was fairly successful at it. And at one point, I almost made the move to LA in 2005 to pursue acting full time. And then I realized that I really actually don't like acting. I don't love it like actors love acting.
Right.
Those pure actors, they sell their soul to the craft. And I wasn't that guy, and I wanted to sell my soul to writing.
I was gonna say, were you writing during this time as well?
Well, so I wasn't. When I was 16, my father's an English professor, and when I was 16, I told my dad that, hey, Dad, I want to be an English major just like you, but instead of like being a professor, I'm gonna write books. And my dad was like, no, son.
Do something practical.
Your life will suffer, is what he said. Your life will suffer. And I'm like,
he's not wrong.
He's not wrong. But because of what he said, I became a computer science major, which I ended up at U of I. And then I became like a consultant, and I did the whole CS track and hated it. I hated it, and yet I did well. Like on one hand, I was terrible at the job. On the other hand, I did pretty well in it, and then I was actually, climbing. And one day I realized that I hate my career. I was training 18, 20 hours a week for martial arts, but what am I going to do with it? And then I thought about hey, what do I want to do with my life? And then I remembered when I was 16, I wanted to write books. So I had to make a choice. And I think it was 2005. I just canceled all my hobbies. I stopped training, stopped going to clubs. I just stopped doing everything. And I sat down and I just started working on my very first novel, which was a 180,000 word low fantasy called Woes, Toads, and Crossroads. And it was terrible. It was terrible. But it was the most important book I ever wrote because I literally learned every mistake you can make in a book. And after that book obviously went nowhere, I wrote Lives of Tao. That was my next book.
Oh, so the book that you got published first was the second book that you ever wrote.
So
I love that you say that you finished that book though, because a lot of people don't finish the first book that they start writing.
Oh, I thought the book was great. I finished it and I was like, this thing is amazing, And my dad wrote it and he read it. He's like, yeah, it's got potential, The thing is, and this is what I realized is, the more you don't know about the craft, the more confident you are. I have published 16 books now. I am the least confident I've ever been in the craft. And part of it's because if you're a lawyer or an attorney or engineer, if you're an attorney or engineer or doctor, whatever, the more time you spend in your profession, the better you are at it and the more confident you are at it. if you're a plumber or electrician, you've seen this before. You know how to fix this. You know how to work around these things. I don't think it's the same for a writer. And every book that I'm working on is the hardest thing I've ever worked on. And part of it's because we're expanding and we're taking more risks and we're trying different things. And, and most writers I know don't write the same stories over and over again.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, some do. Some do. Like, some genres will.
And sometimes they do very well at it monetarily.
And if you find your formula, you make it work, and you're a full-time writer, fantastic. But a lot of us, we we don't do the same thing that we did before. We're trying new things. So no matter how experienced you are, you're always kind of like feeling like you're on shaky ground, and you don't ever feel more confident. But the one thing I will say is, I don't feel more confident about my craft. But the one thing I do get from experience is I know when something is not working. And that makes all the difference. It's people ask me about writer's block all the time. Like, I have writer's block, I can't write. And I think for me, it's when you have writer's block, I don't think it's that you can't write. It's just that you don't like what you're writing, or you're not interested in it, or you're slipping away from it. And the question I always pose back to them is, well, what are you writing? What part of this scene is giving you problems? What do you not like about this? What is causing your attention to slip away? Because if your attention is slipping away while you're writing it, imagine what a reader's doing.
Yep.
If you're boring yourself, you're boring them for sure.
I can't tell you how many writers that I've talked to who said, writing this book made me cry. And I'm like, that's perfect, because hopefully as the editor, it will also make me cry, because you've tapped into the emotions you need to be able to convey that story.
Yeah, for sure. But that's and then so I think I wrote the very first draft of the Lives of Tao in 2007. Then I trunked it for 3 years because I was busy being a raid leader in World of Warcraft, as you do.
We might have been WoW at the same time too.
We were the number one server, a guild on Anubarak back in 2007. Okay, I was a raid officer. I was an officer for a guild that was 150 people. And let me tell you something. There is no better training for leadership and project management than running a guild with 150 people who want like, fat loots. So.
Yeah, I was just a casual player. I had a friend whose husband worked at Blizzard, and they would give me a free card every year. That was great. But then I moved to New York, and I was in the wrong time zone. What was that?
I was the richest guy on my server. Literally, I had the gem market cornered. If I only applied that skill and knowledge and
like to the stock market,
it's something that made money. But no, instead,
actually, that's very true, because after I played WoW, I was like, I think I understand the stock market just slightly more. It baffled me, but just slightly more.
Just slightly more, but yeah. But and then by 2010, I was like, you know what? I again had the epiphany of like, what am I doing with my life? I did not quit martial arts so I could play World of Warcraft for like 16 hours a day.
Right.
So I checked out Lives of Tao, brushed it off, and then submitted it to Angry Robot Books 2012 open submission mark. Right. And that was in like April 2012 for that 1 month of the year. Anybody can submit to them without an agent. They had 1,000 submissions that 1 year. And out of those 1,000, 5 people got book deals, and I was one of the 5.
Oh, congratulations. That really kicked off, what is it now? Almost 10, 15. I can't do math anymore. It is not 2025. I'm sorry. But it's kicked off a great career, right?
It's been 13 years, knock on wood. It's like 3 times the average tenure of a writing career.
Right. Yeah. And I've seen the numbers where more than half of writers make less than $10,000 a year on their writing. Yeah. Now I think that includes like everybody, not just book writers, but that's not a great.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen 5. I've seen you look at like Jim Hines, kind of like he does these surveys that he does, and he's about $5,000 to $8,000, and like, I mean, I hate the idea that publishing for the creative side has become like a hobby career,
Right.
and it's increasingly that way, which is sad because you like when it's, I use the same argument for Midjourney. Okay, it's like we have a bunch of artists who when they're starting out, they're surviving off creating prints, they're surviving off writing book covers and all these things, and eventually they get good enough that they're on the top level, they're like uniquely skilled. But if something like Midjourney or ChatGPT comes in and they take all the business from that middle ground, then all these writers, these artists with potential might not ever make it to the part where they reach their full potential,
right,
because they don't have a way to sustain themselves within that career.
We're having that same conversation on the publishing side of things, because especially we're talking about the big publishers, a lot of the smaller publishers are standing against the AI stuff, but I've been seeing CEOs of some of the bigger companies go, well, isn't this a great idea to replace our editors? And if they ever do think this might actually work and think that they can implement it, what does that mean for editorial assistants who are getting the mentorship along the pipeline? How do you create a pipeline when you have no entry-level employees?
I mean, it's not just that. It's like editing requires nuance. Editing, like you can't even copy editing, which is more technical, requires somebody to look at this word and look at the words around it and how it's structured and where it is within the paragraph. There's all these variables that like come under the human condition, like the person here, when they look at that word that you're trying to edit, can understand what it means and feels when in context with everything else around it. And and
it's not just the words that you're talking about, it's the whole big picture of plot and characterization and pacing and world building and all of those things that, I don't know, maybe eventually we might have a machine be able to handle all those things. Certainly not happening now, but that's a human to human thing for me.
Right.
That is, making art is a human thing.
I mean, so I do have this concern that like at some point AI will be smart enough to write something that is just good enough. Like there are some genres that are volume based, you know, a lot of romance readers will read a book every 10 days, and they are voracious in the content that they consume. And at some point AI will be like, they will write a good enough romance book that satiates that the veracity. But then what does that mean for like, like the Gabardons who write like this deep, intricate romance that has so much nuance and detail and character? Like we're not going to get those anymore, because the whole ecosystem is going to be flooded with good enough books, good enough stories that scratches that niche without having to, that it will only charge you $1 to read the book or something like that.
Right, exactly. So complicated. And
we covered a lot in 30 minutes.
Yeah. Is it already?
We're talking about
well, actually, let's move on to something else, because I think that it's always interesting to talk to writers about their process. And you've got such fascinating concepts that you're working with, whether you're talking about wuxia epic fantasy in a secondary world, or Lives of Tao was in our contemporary world, wasn't it?
I mean, I did have pagers in that. I did have pagers, so that was before smartphones. Right before smartphones came out, so I did have pagers.
So what's the seed that gets you started on any new project, and what does the journey look like for you from seed to finished book? You said as we were talking right before we started that it can take you, or was it in here? I don't know, that sometimes it can take you 2.5 years to finish a book. So that is a very complex process for you. What does it look like for you?
So most writers I know have like 1,000 ideas, and like 1,000 ideas that are ready to go, and they just kind of pluck that idea off the idea tree, and then they plan it, and they're off to the races. I am very jealous of them. I am not like people. I have like one idea at a time if I'm lucky. For well, the War Saga basically was an idea that I had in my head since like 2014, 2015. And it took me 4 years to really have it like just sit in my head, and I couldn't get rid of it. And then after I finished, I think the last book I did before that was the Walking Dead book, Walking Dead Typhoon. That's when I go, okay, I'm ready to work on this book now. Lives of Tao again was a conceit I had about like an alarm clock, and it sat in my head for like 6 months before I wrote it. Time Salvager. At the time, I was on a drug called it was an anti-smoking drug that gave you like very, very lucid dreams.
Oh.
Anyways, I loved it. I had great dreams, but
lots of inspiration.
One night I dreamt that I was I was a time traveler on a Titanic, and I was trying to steal the Hope Diamond. And so I'm wandering around the Titanic, talking to all these people. I'm making friends, fully knowing that this ship was going to sink in 2 days and everybody's going to be dead. And then like right before like the ship sank, I found the Hope Diamond. I was able to jump out, and I woke up, and I'm like, wow, that's a great idea for a story. So I don't have a lot of ideas, and they all come to me, and they have to kind of like latch onto me and like not let go when I try to shake them loose.
Mm-hmm.
So so it's not a great process, to be honest. Okay? It's organic, and like my newest idea is I started working on it, but like I'm not even talking about it anyway.
Don't worry about talking about it. It's in process. Like
it's in the process.
Let it stew.
I want to see how that sausage is getting made, but so generally, once I have an idea, I'm known for high concept ideas. I'm known for action and humor. So these ideas, they kind of have to simmer on my back burner for like a long time before I work. And then once I work, I'm a hybrid plotter. So usually I'll plot like like a 10,000 word outline, but I always like to give I'm a big fan of giving my characters like free will. So I used to basically write a whole plot out, and then outline a whole plot, and then I would start working and writing, and then at some point the character wants to make a left turn, but I want him to make a right turn. I need him to make a right turn, but if I make him a right, but he doesn't want to make a right turn, it's not an honest response. So I let him make that left turn, and I have to replot everything. So now these days I just I usually pants the first maybe like 15,000 words, and then I'll fully outline. But instead of outlining an entire book, I'll outline an act. Like I just outline enough to keep me going. And then if they need to make a left turn somewhere, I love to make all the turns they want to make, and then I re-outline without having to outline the entire damn thing.
Yeah, well, and especially when you're talking about an epic fantasy, that is a big old outline. Yeah, like you've done YA before too, though, right? You worked with Cassie Clare on a couple of YA. So how did that work? Was that because that's a shared world? Did they come to you with an outline? You had to stick to it?
Cassie shockingly gave me she gave me a long leash. I'm like, she goes, oh, this is the idea I have. I want to set it right in this section of, I think it's book 2, when they're on for vacation. Go. That was it. Go. So I mean, look, because she gave me such a long leash, and because I was like writing, all these things, the problem with the long leash is you could write what she might not like the direction you went.
Right.
And that's absolutely happened where she was like, that's not what I had in mind, Right. And part of me wants to scream, well, you should have told me what you had in mind. But it also gave me the opportunity to kind of like flex the creative muscles, and almost like to carve out a little corner of her universe. And she absolutely let me do that more in the second book, in the Lost Book of the White, where set in Shanghai instead of the traditional US or Europe.
Right.
So I was able to like create the Shadow Hunter universe in that small corner of of her world. And it's super cool that way.
That's awesome. So like you really got to take ownership of just a little bit of that world. And that's when I worked at Wizards of the Coast, I was doing mostly shared. Well, we did one non-shared world book, and that got canceled in 2008 when I got laid off. But But that's my role as the editor of something like that, is just basically saying, you know, do what you can, do what you want, as long as it feels like these pillars of
It
the
doesn't
world.
break the physics of that universe. Yeah.
Exactly.
The Walking Dead guys were like that. Like they were like, we want you to do a Walking Dead book set in Asia. Go. As long as it makes sense within the timeline and rules of the universe, you can do whatever you want.
Fascinating.
Which is not true, by the way.
Right.
Because I had just finished the Cassie books before the Walking Dead books. And then Dana Gabaldon I didn't write a lot of romance or spicy scenes in my previous stuff. So Dana Gabaldon took me under her wing when I got that job. And she basically like gave me like a crash course on like how to write sex scenes, how to write gay sex. Because, so she gave me she said that she's like, I haven't published this book yet, but I'm about to publish this how to write sex book. Here, let me send you a copy. So she sent me all that stuff, and then she goes, you should look up yaoi.
Oh yeah, yaoi.
Yeah, yaoi, yeah, which is Japanese
boy. Yeah,
meant for straight women. Very specific, because there's one for men. Yeah. So one day I'm like, after she told me that, I'm watching it and I'm like this, and my wife at the time comes home and she's like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I'm like this. I'm like, I don't know what's going on in my career. But I learned how to write really good sex scenes that way. And so in the Walking Dead book, in Walking Dead Typhoon, I had a 6-page sex scene in there, and the editor was like, Wes, this is a really great scene, but this is The Walking Dead. And so I was like, what else are you gonna do in the apocalypse,
But this story is great, because the thing that I love most about the writing community and book community in general is the way we mentor each other. Right. It's a community. I love that. So I love that she just gave you those resources so that you could be a better writer.
I wrote it, and then it did make me cut down that 6-page sex scene to a page and a half, but but still,
you're like, I did it.
I could have. It was a good sex scene. One of these days.
So, just in case anybody is watching it live, because I know a few people were planning on it, I just want everybody to know that we have a delay on the live stream. So if you have any questions, please enter them so that we can be responding to them in our last minutes. So I have 2 more questions for you, and then we're going to open it up to questions for everybody else. Except that I want to know more about wuxia. I don't understand it. I watch a lot of Korean dramas. I watch a lot of Korean movies, but I don't watch a whole lot of Chinese stuff. And there's so many specific things like being able to ride the wind and stuff like that you've got in the War Arts series that feel like they're specific to this genre of storytelling. Can you tell us about it, and kind of gets back to your Kung Fu movie inspiration, right?
So to break it down to like a very basic explanation is like wuxia is basically it's like medieval Chinese fantasy centered around Chinese martial arts, where the martial arts is magical, where once you are skilled in the martial arts, you can do supernatural things. And one of the more common supernatural things is you can fly. Or jump very high,
or very long distances, or whatever.
And so, like one of the better examples of wuxia is like one of the most famous ones is Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon.
Oh, right,
That's a classic, beautiful example of wuxia, and it's not just the martial arts; it's the romance of it, wuxia is usually like it's very Robin Hood. It's the country folks who are honest and trained in martial arts, and it's the sheriff / king and noblemen who are, and the eunuchs who are evil. And so there's something called the jianghu, which is the translation is like of the forest, and that's like the real people we are the rural people who train, who are good and wholesome, and we were fighting against oppression. So there is definitely a very kind of that sense in wuxia. So like something that's more popular now is called xianxia, which is it's just, still kind of Chinese martial arts, but more spiritual. There's the ghosts and the zombies and like,
that's right up my alley.
Is that right? Maybe I should write a Shinchan.
Yeah, you should. I would totally read it.
There we go. That's what I'll write next.
We actually have a question from Diego, who I work with at Lee and Low. He's asking, and this is actually right into what I was going to ask you next about wuxia. How do you play with tropes and writing conventions like the hero's journey, the chosen one, individualism, and how do you interact with an East versus West view of these tropes and conventions? I was actually going to ask you, like, because it feels like there are specific tropes in wuxia. Were you playing with that in the War Arts trilogy? I mean, is that a trilogy or is it going to be more books?
Oh, it's 3 books and 3 books and done. After like 900,000 words, I'm like, I need something new. In fact, I'm just going to do standalones from now on. Okay. if you're a writer, standalones are amazing. Okay. So here's the thing is I never really wrote based off of tropes. The Art of Prophecy, the first book in the War Saga, was kind of known as I read in a lot of reviews that I was flipping a lot of tropes on its head, and not just like the chosen one trope or the master student trope or the prophecies but so. When I wrote it, I didn't think about like, okay, I'm gonna flip tropes. I just thought, okay, what is something that I want to write, and what's something what's a little tweak of an angle of it that's a little bit different, So the idea that we were marketing books by tropes was relatively new to me because I wasn't keeping, it was like a thing that didn't really exist until like 2019, 2020, right? And I wrote
not as a marketing thing, yeah,
not as a marketing thing. So, but in 2019 when I wrote the first partial for the Art of Prophecy, and then from that point on, I was head deep writing it. And when the book came out, 2022, people were like, "Oh, this book flips a lot of tropes on its head," and I'm like, "Oh, I didn't even realize they were like, we marketed books based off of that. The lovers to hero, enemies to lovers. That was a very strange thing for me. And now everything is a trope. Everything is marketed by trope, and I'm not sure how I feel about that.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about that either because it kind of does play into stereotypes. And before any of this, what you're talking about, I would talk about tropes in the way of like, with like people in my grad program or whatever, as trope equals stereotype.
Yeah.
And, like, are we playing with them or are we playing into them, if that makes sense? That kind of thing, as opposed to being a marketing tool.
Right.
It's interesting though, because like, I think that's the most used in romantasy and romance, because people look for certain kinds of stories.
I feel like a lot of writers now, instead of letting a story flow the way it's supposed to flow, they will like try to hit all these tropes intentionally, or they'll shove it in to make so they can say, oh, this is an enemies to lovers story too,
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I mean, I'm not a fan of publishing by marketing.
Yeah.
So
I'm thinking more along the lines, when I ask about tropes, I'm thinking more along the lines of like, when I watch a Korean drama, they may be new to me, like the story beats that you might see common in Korean storytelling, but they're familiar to a Korean audience.
For sure.
Where, there's the rich chaebol, father who's going to deny the son to marry the Cinderella girl or whatever. And there's the mother-in-law who always, whatever, like those are the kinds of things that I'm thinking about. Like, there are common storytelling in a culture that you can either be like, I'm going to embrace this and play with it, or I'm going to completely turn it on its head. But it sounds like you didn't really do either of those. You were just playing in your own world.
I really don't like outside influences affect how I craft a story together. Because if I do, then it's gonna like a lot of weird things gonna spill in, and then I feel like it's gonna kind of hold me back a little bit because I'm not writing that pure story. I'm trying to get out.
Yeah, interesting. And I have one last question that I actually was inspired by a friend who did this on his own podcast. He's a poet. And he said that they always got fascinating answers. And so we are going to see. Oh, and by the way, that's Pie Wacket in the background. What is your weirdest or most unexpected obsession?
Like obsession?
Obsession. Things that you're really into, like hobbies or anything that you're like super into.
I mean, I'm a big
Now this
nerd.
is the first time I'm trying the question. So
okay, so this is not even a cool answer actually, but like I went for like a good part of a decade collecting keyboards.
Keyboards,
like these. I have like.
Oh, I thought you were talking about pianos.
No, literally keyboards. I had like at one point I had like 70 keyboards, and like I was collecting like IBM Model M keyboards, those old clickety ones, and it was just a thing. I would collect them and I would mount them, and I'd just be like, these are my keyboards. I know, not a sexy answer.
But you're a writer, so
more recently. I don't know what my obsessions are. Let me think about that. I play a lot of pickleball, but that's the world. What are you talking about? You know? Yeah. So I don't think I have any really goofy obsessions. I wish you asked me that ahead of time. I really think about it. But
oh yeah. Well, you can think about it. Well, because I just realized that we meant to talk about more like the publishing industry as well, and I forgot to ask you about it because I hate to leave us on a down note, but a lot of us are dealing with book bans, and it feels like marginalized people are most targeted right now under everything that's happening. And I'm wondering how that's affecting you personally, or what you're seeing, and how that's affecting how you're dealing with the publishing industry.
I mean, I do have a few books that are banned. I think my Shadowhunter books are banned in Florida and Texas. I think, you know, at least to some degrees, pulled from the shelves of libraries. I don't know how it affects me personally, but you know, obviously, I would say that up until like maybe 2015, we were still a very like European centric, especially in genre. It was still very European centric, and you know, we were, you know, everything was Arthurian or German to an extent, and it's been really refreshing to actually have like different voices, different worlds. You know, we're seeing obviously Asian mythology and Asian fantasies and African. So that's been fantastic. And we
absolutely.
In way, we were in a kind of a golden era of that, have all these kind of stories. I mean, it is a shame that like what's happening. Like, obviously, there are certain voices that will be affected more. You know, more LGBT stories. You know, maybe not so much like we're like, you know, different culture of fantasy, but there's definitely been a pushback lately, and I think we're going to see it more. I think it's going to happen. Publishing, it feels to me, has always been very progressive, or at least it tries to be progressive.
Yeah.
And I think there definitely within the past 2 years, there's been a pushback to be a little bit more traditional, and that sucks. You know, obviously, but on the other hand, like, you know, publishing's been doing weird things lately. You know, I think ever since COVID, we've been seeing like a certain, you know, romanticity's been massive. YA's been struggling a little bit. I think middle grade's been struggling a little bit too as well.
A little bit.
I've heard that science fiction's been really hard to sell these days.
Yeah.
I think I told you while we were offline, like the biggest publisher in Germany stopped publishing. The biggest fantasy publisher in Germany stopped publishing fantasy, and part of it was because of Romanticy. You know, and Romanticy got really huge because, well, romance has always been huge.
Right.
But ever since COVID, where like people wanted, you know, that
they kind of want to have escapism.
Escapism, right? So like Romanticy has eaten everybody's lunch. You know, and it's gotten to the point where like I told you earlier, like, you know, it used to be like, oh, rising tide lifts all boats, but it feels like now, specifically for publishers, the truth is they can only publish X amount of books. They can only produce X amount of books. And with so much focus on romanticy now, there are a lot of good books that probably aren't going to get published. Well, at the same time, let's just be honest about like the deluge of romanticy books coming in is they're probably not all good. Now there used to be a cutoff point. You want the good romanticy books there, but now because they want to fill that space, they are pulling in a lot of romanticy books. Some of them who might not be great, but at the expense of other books that
and
are
each
great
one is getting the sprayed edges treatment and all that. Where I even on the bookstore side, for a time I was like, oh, this is something special. I'm going to order in the sprayed edges version, and now it feels like every book is getting the sprayed edge treatment. And that's just a new standard. So it's not necessarily saying this is our number one or our number top 10 out of 100 anymore. It's more like this is the new book. This is a new book. And I am not saying that because I want people who are not familiar with the publishing industry to listen to us and misunderstand. I don't want people to think that I'm saying that means it's a bad book, but there are a million books published literally every year, and not all of them can be the best book ever. So that's where it can be challenging as a bookseller.
Right. And also like, are there like now 5 editions of each book? They'll be like it's kind of like you go to the airport,
kind of a collector situation.
And there's like the regular Lord of the Rings, and there's the sprayed edges Lord of the Rings. Now there's the leatherbound Lord of the Rings. And at some point you're like, this all takes shelf space.
Yeah.
Okay.
My house is going to fall down from the weight.
How many Lord of the Rings editions do we need? It's the same story inside. Can we clear some shelf space for something other than Star Wars and
Yeah. No, I think about that a lot as a bookseller because we are only 1,500 square feet. And so,
shelf space is important.
Sarah J. Maas takes up a whole shelf. Brandon Sanderson takes up like 3, and so I can't keep every book in stock because then it would only be the bestseller shelves. Right. And I need to curate.
And you would be an airport bookstore then.
Yeah. And people come to a small town bookstore because we have different choices.
Oh. So and I think and I don't know if this is actually true. This is just my opinion. So I think one of the big issues that we had was when Barnes and Nobles was bought out by a hedge fund.
Oh yeah.
And they basically said, okay, we're gonna make all the book buyers regional buyers. So now each book buyer in your bookstore, you can buy whatever you want. Instead of a national buyer, you can all choose what books you want to buy. So that sounds great on paper, but I knew the national buyer in Barnes and Noble, okay, and he read everything.
Right.
I don't think the book buyers here in each of the regional stores have time to read everything.
I don't think they have time to read everything, but also they have certain specific directives about what they can bring in. So even though they're giving more control to the locals, they're not really, because they've cut back on hardcover middle grade, for example. And usually that affects the POC and Indigenous authors the most because their book won't get a paperback if it didn't sell well enough in hardcover. Right. So it's this continuum problem.
Well, I feel like the variety has gone down ever since they did this.
Well, it's the toys too.
Yeah. Well, it's the toys.
Shelf space with toys.
It's the toys that are placed right before the books. Like my kids.
Well, I was going to say, you're a dad. You have experience with this, right?
My kids don't make it to the books because they put the toys up front, and then my boys are just like meow, straight to the toys. I get why they did it, but still, it makes me kind of upset because it's like.
Yeah, exactly. I have a question for you because this is a question that most people ask of women who are writers, and you are a newly single dad. So I'd love to ask you, as a writer who is a newly single dad, how do you balance it all? How do you find time to write?
I mean, you don't. I'm not gonna lie. It's. I mean, here's the thing: is my golden writing time is basically 9 p.m. to 2 a.m., and after you drop off the kids, after you do their thing, you pick them up, you feed them and everything. I'm not one of those guys who can sit down and go, okay, I got 20 minutes to write, let's go. You know,
You
I
need
have to really,
that deep work time.
yeah, I have to slide into it. I have to get into the mood. And like, look, I'm a full-time writer. I am contractually obligated to be creative. And there's definitely a space that I mean, because I worked from home even before, I did a fair amount of like the parenting.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't like a huge switch for me, but
Right.
still it's just even more, it's even more now. And I think all I can say is if you want to be a writer and that's part of your job and you have all these responsibilities, day job, kids and everything else, you just got to block that time off and you got to guard it with your life. You got to guard it like it's a job. You know, I don't care if it's half an hour. You've got to guard that half an hour. Like it's that half an hour of your writing time and you're going to sit down and do it. And I don't care if you get 8 words. I wrote with Pat Rothfuss one day and we're just doing like a 1 hour writing thing. And after an hour, I was like, hey, Pat, I got 700 words. How'd you do? And Pat was like, well, I got 8 words, but they were 8 good words. You know,
good.
And that's all you need. As long, whatever your metric for progress is, as long as you're making progress, as long as you don't because it's so easy to just like put it aside, prioritize something else. It's so easy to prioritize everything else in writing.
Yep.
You know, but the more you do it, the harder it is to get back onto it. You know, after I finished the 3rd book in the War Saga, the Art of Legend, I took the summer off. You know, I was buying a house, getting a divorce, blah 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 blah. And now it's like, after taking 3-4 months off of writing, it was so hard to get back into it. You know, I needed it. I wrote 1 million words and I'm like, I needed a break. And the break was great, but it almost feels like I forgot how to do this. I forgot how to become a writer again, you know? So that's a thing. It's definitely a thing. It's a muscle that you have to keep, maybe not work out hard
constantly, but
go for that muscle jog, go that brain jog on writing, and just spend 20 minutes daydreaming ideas or jotting down notes, just something to keep it going. Because once you take the time off or extended period of time, you really do forget how to like sit back into it.
Perfect. I think that's a great note for us to end on. Thank you so much. This has been such a good conversation, and we don't have any more questions, so we'll just end here. Again, the book is the series is the War Arts series, and what is the new book coming? What War Arts Saga? Thank you. You've got a new book coming out next week. 2 weeks.
2 weeks. 10 days. 10 days. Called The Art of Legend. It's the third and final book in the series. I will not leave you hanging.
And where can people find you online?
You can find me. You know what? I'm on Facebook the most now. So look at Wesley Chu on Facebook. I have a Twitter account or X account. I have a Blue Sky account. See, that's the thing.
Do you have just a regular website people can find you at? Sorry, go ahead.
Just look at Wesley Chu. You'll find me somewhere.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much.
All right, thank you. Oh my gosh. Are you still there? Did I lose you? Oh.
Okay, so it's going to upload the files. So if you could leave the tab open for a little while until it gives you a little ding that it's done uploading. Shouldn't take too long.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah, it's still processing. So have a great time at Worldcon.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. That was fun. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Cover all the topics.
Yeah, I was like, I feel like I forgot something because I didn't write it down. But I think it was still a great conversation. So thanks so much.
All right, fantastic. All right, Stacey, have a good one. Good luck.
Bye.
All right, bye-bye.
How do I close this? It's anyway. I'm just gonna leave it open for a little.
Okay.
What was that?
Can I end the call?
Yeah. Oh, there it is. End the call.
All right, thank you.
Bye. There we go. Where is end call?